Welcome to Just Minding My Business Radio, where we are moving at the speed of God, learning what we didn't know we didn't know. I'm your host, Ida Crawford, so grab a pen and paper and get ready for information that you can use.
Welcome to Just Minding My Business Radio with your host, Ida Crawford.
Ida Crawford.
Yes, there she is. And with me, Ruth Haskins, your co-host. We are so pleased to have you with us this afternoon, or this day rather, so that you can hear more really good news and views that you can use. So we encourage you to have a notebook handy and to take notes where it benefits you. Today we have coming to the mic Ms. Berlette Adesalu, born and living primarily in Baltimore, Maryland. She briefly lived in Brooklyn, New York, and Milwaukee, Wisconsin, attended Morgan State University with a bachelor's in sociology. She also attended the University of Wisconsin with an advanced degree, a master's in educational psychology, and also at Loyola College, University of Maryland, where she earned her teacher's certification. After retiring, she was a professor at Sojourner Douglas College, where she said she really enjoyed teaching young adults because many of the people that she taught there were young parents. So we welcome Berlette Adesalu. I hope I'm getting that correct. Welcome to Just Minding My Business.
Thank you for having me.
You're so very welcome. We're glad to have you here. Is there anything in your bio, so to speak, that I may have left out that you would like to add?
I think you're okay.
Okay, good. I know that you're also a parent yourself and a grandparent. So you've had a lot of experience with young people. You've had a lot of experience with education. Now, one of the things we always want to know is how you got started in this field. What made you decide not only to go into education, but also to later go into being a school psychologist?
Well, I think my going into school psychology is really a calling. I got an undergraduate degree in sociology. I was supposed to be a social worker, but Baltimore City called me to be a teacher. So I ended up getting my certification in teaching. And then later on, I married an African and Nigerian. And he said, well, since I'm going to school, why don't you think about going back to school yourself? And so we were accepted at the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee. And the school needed a minority, and I was that person that they chose in their program in educational psychology.
Interesting. Now, what was it about educational psychology that drew you?
Well, when people think about psychology, they usually think about pathology. But in education, we try to look at the positives and the strengths in the individual to promote learning. And I was always interested in how people learn. And so I thought this was a good field for me to go into.
Okay. So when you first started in educational psychology, what grade level were you working with, or was it related to the grades or just to, in general, within the school?
Well, just in general to the school. We work with children from preschool all the way through high school.
Okay.
And most of the time it has to do with how children learn, how we can promote them to learn better and to deal with the problems they may have in school.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Let's just go to the heart of this. In our little pre-conversation, you were talking about that, this whole arena of learning how young people learn is not just about the children or the young people. It also involves the parent. Could you bring that portion into the conversation, the parent's portion?
Well, we always hear that parents are a child's first teachers. It's very common to hear that. But how can parents really promote an awareness that they're capable of affecting their children's ability to learn. And I think since parents are so important in the lives of children, we should start with parents first, and we should encourage them to continue to have positive and high expectations for their children so they can learn.
That's really important. I can hear that, how important that is, because so very often, and we need to even talk about this in terms of, unfortunately, in terms of race. I mean, there are distinct opportunities depending on where you, let's talk about economics, depending on where you live. So that there are those groups that don't have that advantage of having parents who are totally engaged in their education. Now, what differences have you seen? Have you worked with different populations, and have you seen that difference? And can you speak to how that difference can be addressed?
I primarily worked with children in the urban area. The research indicates it really doesn't matter about your socioeconomic status as far as being an effective parent. It's the the quality of interaction that you have with your children. Nothing takes the place of spending quality time with your children. And I know a lot of our parents are working poor, and they really don't have too much time, but the time that they do have, instead of using the television or electronic devices as babysitters, parents need to be more involved with interacting with their children and encouraging them to communicate what's going on with their daily lives, especially in school, because this communication promotes language development. And a lot of our children are not doing well in school because they don't have the language facility. So talking with our children is very important, asking them about their day, how they feel about what's going on with their friends and their teachers. It promotes the communication skills that they need in order to be successful in school.
That's so true. And I'm glad you touched bases on the economics, because I also believe that has not a whole lot to do with education, because, you know, I grew up poor. I mean, we grew up in the projects, but we didn't even know we were poor because of the village that was around us, and my parents were very active in my education. You know, my mother went to the PTA meetings. My mother, you know, was really involved in school work, even though we didn't have the economics. So I'm glad you made that point, that it's all about the quality time, no matter where you are. And I think kids are, if they feel that closeness and that love and that warmth, they are okay with not having what the next kid might have.
Well, that's one reason I think why kids need a lot of stuff, because they don't have that feeling that someone cares.
And a lot of parents try to make up for the time that they don't have by giving a lot of stuff. And some of that, I know at one time it was all about the clothing, but now it's all about the electronics. And could you speak to that a bit, you know, as a school psychologist, the impact that electronics, like, we all know that technology is a benefit, but it has to have impacted, one thing you mentioned, communication. Have you seen it impact education in any other way? And I'm talking about some of the negatives of how technology is being used primarily by the young people. You're talking about communication and socialization skills.
As you mentioned before, that the modern technology can be an assistance to children in terms of helping them learn, but at the same time, we should have moderation in everything. And sometimes we go overboard. I remember an incident with a friend of mine. We went to a college, and young people were sitting around on their various devices, and we had come into the area and we spoke to the young people. No one looked up to speak back. And the research is showing that even though these people may be able to maneuver these electronic devices, their social skills and communication skills are lacking.
Mm-hmm. How is that going to affect them in the future when we look at them as the future leaders and business leaders, et cetera, et cetera?
I think it's going to have a negative effect on a lot of our children, but at the same time, we can give our kids opportunity so they can develop their communication and language skills. You know, we need to provide arenas for young people to participate, not just blame everything on the electronic devices. How many of us just actually sit down and speak with young people about what's going on in their lives, making them feel important, and it also encourages them to speak back. And that's how they hone their communication skills in this interchange.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Absolutely. And it's so funny we're talking about this because I'm on a task force for Baltimore County to look at some of these different areas in terms of supporting kids to be marketable when they graduate from high school. And one of the things that came up is soft skills. The kids lack those skills to be able to communicate verbally because they are so attached to the electronic devices. So right now we're in the process of putting together plans to stimulate that communication, that face-to-face communication, just plain old talking. You know, and it's so funny that, you know, I'll call a kid, let's say in an arena, they will not answer the phone. But as soon as I send a text, they right on it. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I don't like to talk on text. I like to talk on, I want to hear your voice. I want to feel your emotions. And they don't seem to understand that.
That's a good point. It's a good point you brought up about how your language, your speech, it connotes your feelings, and you can express if you have any concerns about something that you really can't express in a text. Mm-hmm. And not only this face-to-face communication, also we read nonverbal cues that we have. A lot of us, especially young people, they have a very difficult time understanding nonverbal cues. They can't tell whether you're happy or really sad, because they haven't had those experiences. And also, young people need to have something to talk about. And talking about what's going on in your community is one way, but also what's going on outside of your community. And what's going on politically and how what's going on in the political arena affects your life. So children have something to talk about.
Mm-hmm. And I
do you
think
find...
Go ahead. One of the things, what I do in my family is dinner. It's very important that, during the week we're all rushy, so we don't get to eat together. But Saturday mornings, I try to fix a good breakfast where we're all sitting around the table, eating together and talking. And, at first it was like my son especially, he wanted to kind of escape. And, as soon as he finished eating, he was, ready to run. I'm like, no. We're going to have a conversation. I just pretty much put it out there. And now it's become part of our Saturday morning ritual is to be able to sit down, have breakfast, and talk, even if it's just for 30 minutes.
Okay. On that note of family, because that's really important, as the school psychologist, and you said that you work primarily in the urban areas, how strong is the family unit when it comes to the arena in which you've been working?
Well, it depends on how you define family. A lot of people think about the traditional nuclear family, but when you're with people who are concerned and they love you and they provided a place for you to stay and they're meeting your basic needs, that's a family as far as I'm concerned. Right. And families are changing as far as their composition. And so we have to validate whenever we find people in family situations that we may not understand, but we need to validate that so they can feel good about themselves. Mm-hmm. I want to go back to what you're saying about having a time where you sit with your family. That's also an opportunity for kids to realize that parents know some things. A lot of times young people feel like we don't know anything. And by being able to communicate, over a period of time, they realize, well, she knows something. And maybe I need to kind of listen to her on some things.
And it gets to, like with my child, I learned a lot about him by doing this, because we do a lot of traveling together and things like that. And I've learned what type of music he likes, just little things that had I not been paying attention and tune with him, and I wouldn't have picked that up. Now, my son is 22 now, but all through his life, when I was sitting down doing bills, when he was a baby, I would sit him on my knee and let him put the stamps on. That was a time, I'm paying bills, I'm taking care of business, but I've got him sitting on my knee, and he's feeling as though he is making a difference in what I'm doing because he's helping me by putting the stamps on the envelope. Just little subtle things that, to me, makes a huge difference in having that bond with your child, because I want my kid to be able to come to me no matter what happens, what goes wrong, and be able to speak to me about it. What's going on with him, because a lot of times kids don't really open up.
And a lot of excuse me.
Go ahead.
And a lot of times we feel as though we don't need to communicate too much with our kids because they're more influenced by their peer group. But children still need their parents there to let them know that they care and they can come to them under any circumstance. And you're allowing your son to put on the stamps also teaches him that you have to pay bills. This is why we have the lights on. This is why we have somewhere to stay, because I'm paying bills.
And all of those little things matter, even that they think they're having fun. And how at the 2-year-old age they want to help with everything. Everything. It's not until they get older when they start to I don't want to wash the dishes and that kind of thing. But as they, I've always had him involved in almost every aspect of what I was doing. If I'm sitting on the computer, I might have him on my knee, and we might be going over some things. And even as a punishment, when he did something wrong, he had to write a paragraph. He had to write a paper for me in terms of why what he did was wrong and what could have happened had this turned out a different way, that kind of things. And I felt like that helped with the writing skills.
I'm glad you talked about writing skills, too, because very few young people have opportunities to write. Even a thank you card, if someone gives you a gift, not always texting someone to thank them for the gift or calling them, but actually writing them a thank you note.
On that note, I just want to pop in, and that's one of the dangers that I see in texting, the way young people text, is that not only do they not have the verbal communication skills, they don't have the body language, the nonverbal communication skills. So many of them cannot write. They cannot spell. And they are so used to abbreviating that if you sit them down and ask them to actually write a paragraph, it's almost unintelligible. I've seen this a few too many times. So there has to become a balance. And I know nowadays, I don't even know what the writing program is in the schools. But English, part of your English was writing, was composition. In fact, that's what it called, composition. That's why we all have black and white composition books, because that was how we learned to build sentences and then to build paragraphs and then to build an actual story or a complete answer to a question. So that's another issue, and I think it really shows up when they finally get to the point where they want to get a job. Because no matter where you go, you still have to have that written skill. that's something that I'm really curious about. You said that you've also worked at Sojourner Douglas and worked with young adults.
Yes.
What is the difference? Now, you talked about the child population. What is the difference with the young adult population? And again, how is technology affecting them? As you met them in the classroom, what was their level of skill in the basic communication arts that you've spoken about so far?
One good thing about working with young adults is that they're motivated. Maybe when they were much younger in school, they weren't that motivated, or they didn't think school was that important. But a lot of times when you want a promotion on your job, or if you're looking for another job, you think about going back to school to improve your skills. And even though some of these young people had deficits when it came to English or whatever, they were willing to learn. Mm-hmm. And that's what motivated me as an instructor. And at the same time, too, so a person has to have a reason for writing. And you can just write. I would encourage, I had one class where I would encourage my students to give a brief bio and to just mention something that had an impact on your life, whether it was positive or negative. And that would start the young people off to learning how to write more proficiently. And it wasn't a put down, like I would read whatever they had written, but it wasn't a put down in terms of, well, you didn't do this or you didn't do that. The mere fact that you took the effort to write something down and you were willing to share that with your classmates, it promoted you where you felt like, well, if I can do it with my classmates, I can do it with other people. And who knows, some people end up writing poetry or they just end up writing short stories.
Excellent. That's one of the things that I know that writing does. And like I said, that's why I'm concerned about so much texting, because unless you're introduced, unless you have a teacher or someone who influences you to discover the written word, the power of the written word, as a way of expressing who you are, it's a part of you that really gets lost. And many people don't have that. So I really commend you for bringing that to your students, because writing is becoming a lost art. I still have one of my grandmother's letters. Letter writing is almost extinct because we text or we email. Tell us more about your experience working with young adults.
I feel like I've learned a lot from the young people, not so much they learn so much from me, because then you realize what a lot of these young people have to go through in order just to show up for class. Because so many of these young people, they have children they have to look out for. It's not just studying for a test or trying to make sure you get your degree, but you still have your daily responsibilities that you have to deal with along with this learning process. And how they can finagle and coordinate everything together and still be effective parents and good students, it's really amazing to me. So I learned a lot from them.
Mm-hmm. And I can remember going through that when I was in college, I kind of put the cart before the horse, so to speak. I decided to go back and get my degree, like in my 40s, and I have already had a family, a full-time job. My kid was pretty young at the time, and it was a lot. I'm here to tell you, it was a lot. I don't know how I did it, but I did it. I think that I needed to get this done. Time I had wasted it, not exactly wasted time, but I just wasn't ready early on. And then when I got ready, I had all of these different responsibilities, and I can recall, getting off from work, 5 o'clock, going to classes. Sometimes I wouldn't even get home until midnight from school, and then have to get up at 4:30 in the morning and get ready for work all over again. So I can definitely relate to some of the struggles that happen when you have a family, a job, and other things that you have to maneuver in the midst of going back to college and bettering yourself. Let's talk a little bit about what needs to happen now. What can parents and our kids begin to do today to make a difference, in all of these different areas that we've spoken about?
Well, I think parents need to keep on doing the good things that make a difference. Sometimes we as parents, we need to be encouraged too, because being a parent is a very difficult job. In fact, people say it's the most difficult job that anyone will ever have, because it's a 24/7 almost. Even when your children are grown, you're still a parent, and they come to you for support and hopefully some words of wisdom. Now, whether they listen or not, that's something else again. But they still come to us when they're in trouble. And we just need to let our kids know that they are important, and we expect the best from them. This is how I tell my children and grandchildren. And especially I try to talk to my males, because it appears like you have a lot of these young women who are going back to school and graduating, but we still need these young men to do something about getting this education. And so I have a grandson, and a lot of people say I'm putting a burden on him, but I let him know. I said, we're dependent on you to not just do well for yourself, but to be able to reach out and help someone else. And you can't do that unless you first do right by yourself. You've got to make sure you accomplish your goals so you'll be able to help someone else.
That's right. I always tell my son, I want you to be an asset to society, not a menace.
And it's hard. It's hard as a black male. And there's a lot of things that are against these young black men. And we just have to be encouraging, and we have to also speak out. And as parents, some of us have to march, and we have to protest to make sure that our children are treated fairly and given an opportunity so they can blossom and become all that God intends for them to be.
Mm-hmm. Amen to that, for sure. Yeah, because it's tough out here. It's tough out here all the way around, and a lot of things that our young people see isn't always positive. You know, there's so much going on in the world that's not right, that's constantly in our face on a day-to-day basis. You know, sometimes, it's very difficult to stay motivated about what you're doing because of what you're seeing on a day-to-day basis, and having those people in your life that really want you to blossom and be your best self is very, very critical, very critical. And as adults, I think it's important, whether it's your kid or somebody else's kid, to be able to always provide motivation and a word of encouragement to a young child, whether it's yours or not.
Well, it goes to this, it takes a village. Well, it takes a community, like you say, that may not be your child, but you should have the interests of all kids.
Well, our world has changed so much. There was a time where that was just the rule. If you saw someone's child acting up, if you saw someone's child in trouble, it was automatic that you would reach out. Now there's so many legal concerns that people have, and also sometimes a level of selfishness that we don't always reach out to these young ones or to their parents. So on that note, we're talking about all the influences, the outer influences, the things that influence our young people, the things that influence a young adult, the things that influence a parent. What is it? For children, they have to be led by their parents. They have to be led by the example of their parents or another caring adult. But what is it that other caring adult or parents need to do for themselves in order to be in a better position to help their children?
Well, like you said, sometimes we put the cart before the horse, but still we can make things better for ourselves and for our children. The research indicates that when parents do better, their children do better. Mm-hmm. So when you have young people who decide to go back to school so they can get a better job, or maybe move in a different community where it's not so much violence, that also helps their kids. And sometimes for these young parents, that's the expectation, that if I do better, then my kids will have an opportunity to do better. So everybody has an opportunity to grow, the parents and the children. And children they look at their parents as a model of what I should be doing. If the parent keeps their eye on the prize, then your child can understand when you say, continue to work hard for whatever goals you have in life. Surround yourself with supportive people. That includes your peer group. Do the best you can. And if you run into trouble, ask for help from people who can help and are willing to help.
So at this point, I know one of the questions that I have for you is, what are some of the resources that are available to young people as well as to parents as they enter into this school year? What are some known and reachable resources that would be able to help them?
Well, most schools now have social workers, they have school psychologists, they have counselors that both parents and students can reach out to. Also, there are community resources. They're not enough. In fact, I don't think they have enough programs that prevent children from getting into trouble. It sounds like first you have to get in trouble in order to get any help.
That's
wow.
what it sounds
That's
like.
sad.
Yes.
That's very sad. But that's also been true, always been true.
And then, too, people go to church. They don't go to church as much as they used to. But I know growing up, the church was a great resource for me.
Mm-hmm.
It made a difference. And sometimes parents also allow their kids to engage in supervised sports activities, so they look towards their coach to be supportive and encouraging, especially for young men, also for young women too, but especially for young men, because I know some of our kids, they may be interested in something like boxing, and we have an inner city organization that helps children who are interested in boxing.
Oh, okay.
And I think there's quite a few things that kids can be involved in almost every community, because just like you, just like myself, we are people that really care about the future of our kids. And there are so many soldiers out there that feel the same way and have developed programs to be able to support the young people and be able to, have them engage in activities that they're interested in. I think there's a gentleman doing yoga for kids, and they're bringing it to some of the schools. I'm working with the Speak Life Tour, and that's all about young people in the arts, whether it's the spoken word or, art, drawing, and things like that. So there's a lot of things out there to get our kids engaged in. So the issue is those who are not engaged, we need to find out why they're not engaged. Are they not being exposed from their schools? Are they not? I'm not sure where the divide is.
I think there are a combination of things. There are a lot of things out there that prevent children from realizing the resources that are out there, or prevent them from reaching out to these resources. And sometimes we have to maybe start with the parents. If schools are having problems with a particular children, they need to kind of invite parents in and kind of let them know that they're not in this by themselves, that there are resources out there that can support them so that their children will have positive experiences, not just in school, but in their community.
Mm-hmm. I agree, because that's what it's about. If you expose your kid to certain things, as many things as possible, then that will give them ideas in terms of, that will help them to grow and see what they like. Because a lot of times if you're not exposed, you don't know what you don't know. You just don't know until you get that exposure, and then you begin to think about the way you're feeling in that particular arena, and that sparks a whole nother interest level and possibilities.
I think that's a really important point that you just brought up, Ida. Possibilities. That's one of the things that young people, our children, as well as parents need to have possibility thinking. And they can't do that unless they get the exposure. And that's where you mentioned the arts. The arts are such an entree into the world, because so many times you can take a child to, even if you take them to the zoo, that's a beginning where they begin to think about, oh, wait a minute, look at this animal, look at that animal. The whole idea of biology, and then they hear it reinforced a little bit in school. It can light a fire. If they are, you can take them to a concert, be it a jazz concert or any other kind of concert where they can see live music. That may be the spark for a child. It also may be a spark for the parent, because so many parents bury their own creativity, their own gifts, because early in life, their gifts were basically ignored. And sometimes they don't even recognize that that's been going on with them until they have the opportunity to take their child to an event. And all of a sudden they remember, oh my goodness, I used to really love this particular thing. And that in itself can ignite a fire for the child when they see their parent come alive. So often, because young people are in situations that are difficult, parents are, like you said, families come from all kinds of compositions now. There's not the traditional family any longer. I don't know, I just always feel that the creative arts and creativity can mean, they used to have, what was it called? Home economics. It was an opportunity for young girls to really learn different things like sewing, fashion, a beginning. Boys used to have shop, and they worked with cars, or they learned how to do carpentry. Those are all types of things that really, they bring the child and the parent into a situation where they are going to spend quality time together and maybe create something together, or at least spark an interest. I think sometimes a lot of our young people don't do well because, learning the ABCs is a necessity, learning the math is a necessity, but at some point they have to find something that excites their soul, so to speak. And that's where the arts and even the crafts come into such play. And our young ones need more exposure to that. And it's often, I know many schools no longer have music or the art in their programs. Most schools do not have even bands anymore. Being part of the band used to be a big thing. So how do we address all of that? I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot because we want our children to grow up and with a hope and knowing that they do have a future. What do we do? Because there is so much, in so many cases, hopelessness. They don't see themselves as having a future. And that's very true for a lot of young people. That's why I hate to bring it up, but that's one of the reasons the suicide rate amongst young people is exorbitant. So how do we combat all that? Berlette,
I hear a lot of parents telling me that they don't have the funds to have their kids to be engaged in various programs, but I still look in the weekender and look for free activities.
Okay.
And I tell parents, and I said the library is free.
Yes.
And some of the libraries, they have speakers and they have story time, and you find those resources that have charge a minimal fee or that are free, and you can start there.
That is an excellent suggestion. That's an excellent suggestion. Because I think that is one of the things people say, I can't afford it. But because we're so busy looking at what we can't afford, we don't turn our thinking around and say, well, is there something I can afford? And the library is free. We're very fortunate, and there are some excellent programs.
Yeah.
And we also, I think you need some kind of spiritual life, too, because of what a lot of our urban youth have to go through and their parents have to go through. A lot of our people are depressed.
There you go. Okay, let's talk about that, please, because that is, yes, and it's evident. So again, where do they go for help? How do you even begin to address? Because a lot of people do not know that they are depressed. They just think that this is life. This is where things go. How do we re-educate that so that we can start, so that people can start having the life that God intended for them to have? Some of the joy, the possibilities.
And the balance of life. I mean, if you think about the things that balance out life, you have to have a spiritual side. You have to have the family connectivity. And I think the balance is just not there. You know, it's either there's too much activity in one area and not enough in another. And I think that the balance needs to be, it may even have to be taught in terms of what life is really all about. You know, it's not about just hustling and going and doing and doing. You have to have a balance of things. And that, and as Berlette was saying, that spiritual side is really key. That is really key.
Yeah. When we were growing up, a lot of us didn't know that we didn't have. Okay? Yeah. Some of us had quite a bit. But the thing that kept everything together was love.
Yeah.
It wasn't stuff. Today, kids have so much stuff. We have so much stuff. One of my favorite awarenesses is there's some tremendous statistic that Americans have so much stuff that 1 out of every 3 families has more than 1 storage unit. Their houses are full of stuff. And where I live, sometimes I'll go buy a house and their garage door will be up and it's like horror time. You wouldn't want to get in there and have anything fall on you. And there are storage units being built every single day because people have so much stuff. But it's not the stuff. It's not the material stuff that makes us happy. It's not the material stuff that gives us the strength to go out and meet the world as a child or as a parent. It really is that spiritual side. And unfortunately, in today's world, the spiritual side has been pushed aside in so many cases for the material stuff. And we have tons of stuff, but the spirituality is lacking, and our children are growing up without that. And they're being told, unfortunately, again, that in order for them to be good or wonderful in this world, they have to be able to get more stuff. Still not the answer. People have stuff and they're not happy. So again, it's like we're going into a new school year. Young people are going to be influenced by all the other young people that they meet. Some will have more than others. Some will feel shame because they don't have. And they will feel shame because people will shame them. You know, why don't you have this and why don't you have that? They're going to take that home with them. That is going to, it's like a boomerang effect. But often when we have a strong spiritual base, we can withstand and endure anything. And that's the piece that I feel is so important for our young people, for everyone, parents especially. And sometimes they get so hurried and harried and they're working so hard to give their children a better life that spiritual peace goes missing. And that spiritual peace is what makes a family and keeps it together and allows children to grow up strong, knowing that they have value and being able to share that value effectively in the world. without compromising themselves. Too many young people are compromising themselves.
And not only that they have value, but other people have value too. That's part of the problem.
Yes.
Yes. So, Berlette,
we all have value, and we need to learn to respect that again. If we ever had it and lost it, we need to come back to that point. That's so important. Thank you for saying that.
Yes, absolutely. So, Berlette, so now that you're all retired and all that good stuff, what are you doing now in terms, are you still active?
I'm not as active as I want to be. Now I'm working in my church, and it's more or less just trying to keep things going. I took a little hiatus when I first retired from Baltimore City Public School System, and then I went right into that same year, in the fall, I went right into teaching. And then after the school was closed, then I took a little break. But I'm ready to start something else. And I enjoy this opportunity to speak on your program. And also I was given an opportunity about, I guess it was a few months ago, where I spoke on a live radio show about seasonal depression among people of color. Because a lot of times when it comes to mental health, we don't want to talk about, I don't know whether it's a cultural thing or what, we don't want to talk about mental health. And people of color, they have a right to have problems, and when you think about mental health, when you consider how they have been treated and continue to be treated in this environment. Yes. And for you not to express whatever because of the way you're treated and being told that you have to smile all the time and you have to act like everything is okay, and you can't become angry and you can't weep and you can't mourn because it makes other people uncomfortable, even though it may help you. And so I try to talk to parents that, you know, maybe your child is acting out because of some things that's going on here in the home that he can't express to you. One thing I found, a lot of our young people, especially in the inner city, they move a lot. We have a lot of kids that move in one school year. They may live in 3 or 4 different places. And I try to impress upon parents, I know it may be an economic situation, but you know in the beginning whether or not you can afford to pay that rent. So you need to find a place that's going to be stable for your child, because it's very disheartening and anxiety-provoking when a child comes home and he doesn't know whether or not he's going to be in the same place or not. You know?
And they can't get attached to other people.
That's it.
They always on the move.
They're on the move, and then you notice too, a lot of these storage places are in areas where you have people of color too, because a lot of times people don't have a permanent residence, so they got their stuff stored in these places, these spaces.
Yes, exactly.
True. You know,
and then they lose it, and they're starting all over again.
Yeah, we could go on and on and on, and we are way past the top of the hour.
Oh, is it really? Ooh. Okay. But I really enjoyed this.
Oh, me too. And every time we're talking about things like this, it's very, very, it's very empowering to me, you know, because I think that these conversations need to be had. And Berlette, we are going to be doing we've been doing some things around the mental health, and then what we're planning to do going forward is to do a live round table with other people that are involved with the mental health movement, awareness. So we would love to have you
thank you.
We would love to have you a part of that.
Absolutely.
But we're going to wrap up because I know we have been rolling right along.
It was really a pleasure.
Yes, it was. And thank you so much for working with us and just having your voice on this platform and bringing empowerment to other people is a blessing in itself. So thank you.
You're quite welcome. And I'm looking forward to meeting with you again in another forum like this.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We definitely want to do something live going forward. So thank you. And thank you, audience, for tuning in. We appreciate you as well.
This show is brought to you by the amazing women of a Sister Circle Empowerment Network, ASCEN LLC, where we are never in competition, but always in collaboration, and our valued sponsors. Learn more about our sponsors and their services and membership in a Sister Circle, ASCEN LLC, at www.assistercircle.org. To learn about becoming a sponsor for Just Minding My Business Radio and how our marketing package benefits your company, please visit our website at www.assistercircle.org. Voiceovers by RCH VoiceWorks. Contact slvoiceworks8201 at yahoo.com or call 443-620-4115.
Thank you for tuning in to Just Minding My Business Radio. I'm your host, Ida Crawford. We hope you enjoyed the show and appreciate you stopping by. Many blessings to you and yours.